The emergency session of the United Nations Security Council stretched into its 14th hour. Representatives from every major nation sat ashen-faced as they reviewed the sensor data from Captain Reeves' transmission. The footage playing on the chamber's central holographic display showed the 7 Caxtheri vessels repositioning into a defensive formation just beyond Mars' orbit. Their energy signatures are off the charts. General Alvarez of the Pan-American Defense Coalition reported, his voice hoarse from hours of briefing. One ship alone could neutralize our entire nuclear arsenal. All 7 could sterilize the planet. The Chinese ambassador slammed her fist on the table. Then what choice do we have but to demonstrate our value as they demand? A murmur of defeated agreement rippled through the chamber. Dr. Amara Okafor, director of the Global Xenobiology Initiative, stood quietly at the back of the room. She had been analyzing the biological readings from the alien vessels since they first appeared. Something about their composition nagged at her scientific instincts. "May I speak?" she asked, stepping forward without waiting for permission. The Secretary General nodded wearily. "These vessels aren't just ships," Okafor explained, transferring her findings to the main display. "They're partially biological. The hull material incorporates living tissue that interfaces with mechanical components, essentially cyborg spacecraft." The Russian president scoffed. "And how does this help our situation?" "Because all biological systems have vulnerabilities," Okafor replied. "No matter how advanced, they must follow certain universal principles. Their biology appears insectoid in fundamental structure, but with unique adaptations for space travel and technological integration." She zoomed in on a cross-section of the alien hull. "These organic components provide them with tremendous advantages: self-healing capabilities, neural speed reactions, enhanced sensory awareness. But they also create potential weaknesses." The Secretary General leaned forward. "What kind of weaknesses?" "Biological systems require nutrients, waste disposal, protection from pathogens, and maintenance of homeostasis," Okafor explained. "Disrupt any of these, and the system begins to fail." The American president frowned. "Are you suggesting we could?" "What? Give their ships a disease?" Okafor's eyes hardened. "I'm suggesting that if they want to see humanity's worth, we show them exactly what humans do best: adapt and survive at any cost." The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. In Earth's orbit, the International Space Station had been converted to an observation post. Captain Reeves monitored the alien vessels with mounting dread. Their stillness was unnerving, like predators waiting for prey to make a fatal move. "Incoming transmission," her communications officer reported suddenly. "It's directed specifically at you, Captain." The main view screen flickered, revealing a Caxtheri for the first time. Its multifaceted eyes gleamed with cold intelligence. Mandibles clicked in patterns that the translation software struggled to interpret. "Human female designated Captain," it began, its translated voice unnaturally flat. "Our preliminary assessment of your species is complete. You are inefficient, fractious, and technologically primitive. Justify your continued existence or prepare for replacement." Reeves swallowed hard, aware that she was suddenly speaking for all of humanity. "We are a young species," she began carefully. "But we have accomplished much in our brief history." "We?" The alien interrupted with a dismissive gesture. "We have observed your broadcasts for decades. Your species spends more resources on conflict than cooperation. You poison your own habitat. You allow members of your collective to starve while others accumulate excess resources. Explain why such a species deserves to continue." Before Reeves could answer, the alien added, "You have 48 hours to provide a compelling demonstration of human value. After this period, we will begin systematic harvesting of Earth's resources. The process is incompatible with human survival." The transmission ended abruptly. As the implications of the alien's words spread across global communications networks, humanity's governments began preparing for war, a war they had no hope of winning through conventional means. But humans had always excelled at unconventional solutions when backed into a corner. In her laboratory beneath Geneva, Dr. Okafor was already assembling a team of the world's most brilliant virologists, entomologists, and xenobiologists. If they want to see our value, she told her hastily gathered colleagues, let's show them exactly what humans are capable of when our survival is threatened. Admiral Chen stood motionless before the UN Security Council, her grief locked away behind military discipline. The holographic display behind her showed real-time satellite imagery of what remained of Shanghai, a perfect circle of devastation extending 30 kilometers in every direction. At the epicenter, the ground had been compressed to a glass-like substance that still glowed faintly from the gravitational forces that had crushed it. The weapon they deployed was not designed to intimidate. Chen continued, her voice steady, despite having lost her husband, 2 children, and parents in the attack. It was a field test. They wanted to observe how their gravitational technology would interact with our infrastructure and our bodies. She tapped her tablet, and the display changed to show intercepted Cax-theory communications, complex mathematical formulas, and biological readings. They're collecting data on our cellular breakdown under extreme gravitational stress, Dr. Patel, the chief medical examiner, explained. His hands trembled slightly as he expanded the diagrams. The pulse was calibrated specifically to liquefy human tissue while preserving certain biological markers for analysis. This wasn't a warning shot. It was a harvesting operation. The Brazilian president vomited into a wastebasket. A French representative openly wept. Chen switched the display again, showing thermal imagery of the Cax-theory fleet. While they were attacking Shanghai, we managed to get detailed scans of their vessels during the energy discharge. The ship's shields were temporarily reconfigured to channel the gravitational weapon. She zoomed in on a specific section of the lead vessel. Their defenses are formidable, but not omnidirectional. During weapons discharge, there's a 3-second vulnerability at these junction points. She highlighted several areas on the ship's hull. What good does that do us? Demanded the Russian president. Even with this knowledge, our weapons can't penetrate their technology. Chen's eyes flashed with cold determination. Not our conventional weapons. No. But I've been consulting with a coalition of scientists who believe we have an option they won't anticipate. She nodded to a thin man with wire-rimmed glasses who stood nervously at the edge of the chamber. Dr. Hiroshi Tanaka, formerly the world's leading virologist before he'd lost his position due to controversial research, cleared his throat. The Cax-theory vessels incorporate biological components into their technology, he explained. Living tissue that's integrated with mechanical systems. We recovered samples from the edge of the impact zone in Shanghai. Cellular residue from the weapon discharge backwash. He displayed microscopic images of alien cellular structures. Their biology is based on different amino acids than ours, but still follows certain universal principles. And like all biological systems, it can be disrupted. You're suggesting biological warfare against an enemy that just atomized 20 million people, the American president asked incredulously. I'm suggesting we use their own arrogance against them, Tanaka replied. They see us as primitive prey, not as a threat. They won't have biological countermeasures in place because they don't consider us capable of such an attack. Admiral Chen stepped forward again. We have less than 30 hours remaining before their deadline expires. Our satellites have detected movement in their fleet. They're preparing for a full-scale invasion. She displayed a global map with dozens of red dots. These are hardened underground facilities around the world. Since the Proxima Centauri signals were first detected 10 years ago, we've been quietly preparing contingencies for first contact scenarios, including hostile ones. The UN Secretary-General frowned. The public was never informed of these preparations. Because panic serves no strategic purpose, Chen replied without apology. These facilities contain experimental aircraft equipped with modified ablative heat shields. They won't register on the Cax-theory sensors until they're too close to intercept. But we need volunteers for what amounts to a one-way mission. The room fell silent. "I'll do it," said the Italian representative, standing suddenly. "My daughter was studying in Shanghai. If there's even a chance to make these bastards pay." "As will I," said the Indian defense minister. "But 2 people aren't enough." Chen's tablet pinged. She glanced down, then looked up with the first hint of hope since the attack. "According to these reports, we won't have a shortage of volunteers. Terminal cancer patients from hospitals worldwide. Veterans. First responders. They're already gathering at the designated facilities." Dr. Tanaka adjusted his glasses. "I'll need 48 hours to perfect the viral agent." "We have 30, Chen replied. Tanaka nodded grimly. "Then we'll do it in 30. The retrofitted cargo bay of Eden Squadron's lead ship resembled a hospital ward more than a military vessel. Dr. Sophia Reyes moved between the volunteers, administering final injections. Each person received a slightly different viral strain, a precaution against the Caxtheri developing a single cure. "This won't hurt," she assured Maria Garcia, a 68-year-old grandmother with stage 4 pancreatic cancer. "The virus is dormant in human tissue. It only activates when it contacts Caxtheri biological matter." Maria nodded calmly. "My grandchildren are in Mexico City. If those things get past us—" She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't need to. Across the cramped cabin, former Special Forces Colonel James Mbeki helped secure harnesses for the other volunteers. The ship had been designed for one purpose only: to breach the Caxtheri hull at a vulnerable point during weapons discharge. There were no ejection systems, no escape pods, no pretense that this was anything but a suicide run. 90 seconds to launch, announced the automated system. The ship was piloted by AI, a final gift from the world's leading computer scientists who had worked feverishly to perfect the guidance systems. Dr. Rice completed her rounds and took her own seat. As the ship's medical officer, she could have remained at the launch facility, but she'd insisted on joining the mission. "I won't ask others to carry something I created without sharing the risk," she told Admiral Chen during her briefing. "Does anyone want to say anything?" Colonel Mbeki asked, looking around at the faces of his unlikely squad. A young man named David Zhang, his body wasted from radiation treatments for leukemia, raised his hand. "I've never been religious," he said quietly, "but I'd like to say the prayer of St. Francis. My mother used to recite it." No one objected. As the engines began their ignition sequence, 20 voices joined in what they all knew might be their final act of communion with humanity. "Lord, make me an instrument of your peace." In the command bunker beneath the Rockies, Admiral Chen watched as the global nuclear launch sequence reached its final stage. 147 nuclear missiles, the combined remaining arsenals of 9 nations, would detonate at precisely calculated points in Earth's atmosphere. The resulting electromagnetic pulse would create a temporary sensor blindness for the Caxtheri fleet, providing a crucial window for the Eden Squadron ships to approach. Nuclear launch in 3, 2, 1. The bunker's displays momentarily went white as the sensors registered the simultaneous detonations. Backup systems immediately kicked in, showing the Caxtheri fleet's reaction, or rather, their lack of one. "They're not responding," reported General Williams, bewilderment in his voice. "They could easily have shot down those missiles." "They didn't perceive them as a threat," Chen replied. "They're watching for direct attacks on their vessels, not atmospheric detonations. Their arrogance is their weakness." A communications specialist interrupted. "Eden Squadron reports successful launch of all vessels. Estimated time to target: 6 minutes. On the bridge of the Caxtheri command ship, Hive Commander Vexrix observed the nuclear detonations with mild curiosity. Peculiar, it communicated to the ship's neural network. "They've damaged their own communication infrastructure. Perhaps a primitive attempt to prevent harvest coordination," suggested a subordinate. "Analysis indicates their technological systems will be disrupted by these electromagnetic pulses." "Irrelevant," Vexrix responded. "Their technology is already inadequate for resistance. Begin the next phase of the demonstration. Target their secondary population center. The massive ship began to reorient, its weapon systems charging for another gravitational pulse, this time aimed at New York City. The hull began to reconfigure, opening specialized conduits to channel the immense energies required. What the Caxthery sensors failed to detect, obscured by the lingering effects of the EMP, were the small craft accelerating toward these temporarily exposed vulnerabilities. In Eden Squadron's lead ship, Dr. Rice felt a strange calm descend as the target approached. The Caxthery vessel filled their view screen, an impossibly vast structure of gleaming, almost organic-looking material. 60 seconds to impact, the AI announced. Targeting solution confirmed. Hull vulnerability exposed and locked. Maria Garcia reached over and took Raya's hand. "When we were children," she said softly, "we used to fear monsters under the bed. How strange that at the end, we become the monsters under their bed instead." Colonel Mbeki allowed himself a tight smile. Eden lead to all Eden vessels. For Earth. The acknowledgments came in from the 216 other ships, each carrying its own payload of volunteers and viral agents. For Earth. The impact jolted Hive Commander Vexrix from its neural connection to the fleet consciousness. Warning signals flooded its compound sensory system, unfamiliar sensations of alarm that no Caxthery commander had experienced in generations of conquest. Multiple hull breaches detected, reported the subordinate, its mandibles clicking frantically. Sectors 7 through 13 compromised. Vexrix's carapace flushed with anger pigment. Impossible. These primitives have no weapons capable of. "They're not using weapons," interrupted the ship's biological interface specialist. "They're using vessels. Primitive craft striking us at precisely calculated impact points." On the external sensors, Vexrix watched in disbelief as dozens of small, clearly sacrificial human craft slammed into Caxthery ships throughout the fleet. The strategy defied all conquest protocols. No species had ever sacrificed their own transport vessels as kinetic weapons. The approach was too costly, too inefficient, too irrational. Vexrix hissed. "This violates all strategic principles." In the shattered remains of Eden Lead, Dr. Rice regained consciousness pinned beneath a twisted bulkhead. Blood trickled from a gash in her forehead, but the ship had accomplished its mission. They had breached the Caxthery hull. Through the jagged opening, she could see the alien vessel's interior, pulsing, semi-organic conduits interwoven with crystalline technology. Most of her fellow volunteers were dead from the impact. Colonel Mbeki lay nearby, his legs crushed but his eyes alert. He met her gaze and nodded toward the viral distribution device, their precious cargo, miraculously intact. "Still with us, Doctor," he managed through gritted teeth. Rice checked the device's status. Payload intact. Automatic dispersal in 40 seconds. A chittering sound drew their attention. 3 Caxthery warriors approached through the breach, their armored carapaces gleaming under the emergency lights. Each stood nearly 3 meters tall, with multiple limbs ending in what appeared to be both natural weapons and technological implements. "Fascinating," said the lead warrior, its translator rendering its clicks and pheromone signals into stilted English. "You deliberately collided with our vessel. Explain this inefficient tactic." Rice locked eyes with Mbeki. They only needed to delay for 30 more seconds. "We wanted to say hello." "Personally," Mbeki replied, coughing blood between words. The Caxthery tilted its massive head, compound eyes gleaming with alien intelligence. "You sacrifice yourselves without purpose. Your species will still be harvested." "Not without purpose," Rice countered, drawing the alien's attention. "We wanted you to see human faces before you die." The lead warrior stepped closer, mandibles opening in what might have been amusement. "Before we die. Your species' capacity for self-deception is remarkable." The viral distribution device beeped softly. 10 seconds. "We call it hope," Rice said quietly. "Something your species wouldn't understand." Throughout the Caxtheri fleet, similar scenes played out as the human vessels. Those few that had succeeded in their suicide missions delivered their payloads. The viral agents, designed to specifically target the biotechnological interface systems of the alien ships, began their work. On the bridge of another Caxtheri destroyer, Sub-Commander Kretax was the first to notice something wrong. The neural interface connecting it to the ship's systems began to feel strange. Thousands of years of evolution had perfected the symbiosis between Caxtheri biology and their technology, creating a seamless merger of mind and machine. But now, contamination detected in bioneural pathways, Kretax reported, its voice trembling with an unfamiliar sensation. Fear. The ship is rejecting me. Across the fleet, the pattern repeated. The viruses attacked the living components of the ship's systems, causing cascading failures in propulsion, weapons, and life support. Some vessels lost gravitational control, their crews suddenly finding themselves floating helplessly. Others experienced weapons misfires, damaging nearby Caxtheri ships. In the command ship, Vexrix watched in mounting horror as the fleet status indicators turned from green to amber, then to red. How is this possible? It demanded, physical pain shooting through its neural connection as the virus reached the command ship systems. They're savages, primitives. The biological interface specialist, already showing signs of infection, struggled to maintain its composure. They engineered a virus specifically for our biotechnology. They would have needed samples of our biological material to do this. Understanding dawned on Vexrix with terrible clarity. The demonstration strike. They harvested cellular material from the gravitic backwash. For the first time in its long life, Vexrix experienced something no Caxtheri warrior was ever trained to handle: respect for an opponent. All functioning vessels, it commanded through the deteriorating fleet consciousness, prepare for immediate orbital bombardment. Sterilize the planet's surface. I want these humans exterminated before they can surprise us again. Jin Weijiao hadn't seen daylight in 6 days. The underground facility beneath Seattle's ruins housed the most sophisticated quantum computing array ever assembled, a desperate collaboration between nations that had been rivals just weeks before. Screens surrounded him, displaying the partial successes of humanity's viral attack on the Caxtheri fleet. "We've bought ourselves maybe 12 hours, he told Admiral Chen over a secure quantum-encrypted channel. Their systems are adapting to the viral agents faster than we anticipated. Chen's holographic image nodded grimly. Then we need to implement Scorched Earth immediately. All resource denial protocols are now active. As they spoke, across the planet, humanity was undertaking the most drastic measure in its history, deliberately destroying its own critical infrastructure and natural resources to deny them to the invaders. In Saudi Arabia, oil field engineers detonated carefully placed charges, igniting the vast Gawar reserves. Columns of black smoke visible from orbit billowed into the atmosphere. In China, explosive charges precisely calculated by structural engineers severed key support sections of the Three Gorges Dam. Billions of gallons of water crashed through the Yangtze River Valley, wiping out infrastructure the aliens might have utilized. Nuclear plant operators worldwide initiated controlled meltdown protocols, rendering vast territories uninhabitable to the Caxtheri larvae that would require Earth's fertile regions. From his workstation, Zhao watched the destruction with a detached sadness. "It's working," he reported, studying the alien communications his team had intercepted. Their resource acquisition teams are reporting significant degradation of harvest potential. But Zhao's true focus lay elsewhere. For weeks before the invasion, he had been leading a classified project to understand the quantum entanglement communications used by the Caxtheri. Now, with samples collected from damaged alien vessels, his team had made a breakthrough. "The entanglement patterns are complex but predictable," explained Dr. Fatima Al-Hassan, a quantum physicist who had once been Zhao's academic rival before the invasion forced them into collaboration. Their entire communication network relies on precisely calibrated quantum states that propagate instantaneously across distances. And we can interfere with these states? Chen asked. Zhao's tired face broke into a smile. Better, we can impersonate them. He gestured to a specialized transmitter, a hybrid of human technology and salvaged Caxtheri components. This device can generate quantum signatures indistinguishable from authentic Caxtheri communications. We've broken their encryption, Admiral. We can send false orders that will appear to come from their high command. Chen leaned forward, suddenly alert. What are you proposing? Something they'll never expect, Zhao replied. If they believe they're about to lose this system, they might cut their losses, especially if they think something worse is coming. With trembling fingers, he hadn't slept in nearly 40 hours, Zhao activated the quantum transmitter. The message he sent was simple but meticulously crafted to match Caxtheri military protocols. EMERGENCY Unknown hostile fleet. DETTTED 8PPROACHLNGQAXTAARI Prime Worlds from Galactic Core. Estimated arrival 37 CYCLEs. Fleet composition 3,291 capital class vessels. Origin unknown. Psygenatures make Tichi Nino Gnome and species. The message included fabricated sensor data, detailed enough to be convincing, showing massive energy signatures approaching Caxtheri territory from a direction they weren't monitoring. The false fleet appeared to be on a direct course for their homeworlds. Will they believe it? Chen asked. Dr. Al-Hassan nodded. The quantum signature is perfect, and the threat scenario exploits their evolutionary psychology. The Caxtheri evolved as ambush predators. They are hardwired to be suspicious of attacks from unexpected vectors. Zhao added, they've conquered hundreds of species without significant resistance. They have no reason to suspect this level of deception from primitives like us. On the Caxtheri command ship, the message caused immediate chaos. Vexrix, already struggling with the viral infection spreading through the fleet's biological components, found itself facing a potentially greater threat. Verification, it demanded, mandibles clicking frantically. Confirm source authentication. The communication specialist, its neural implants flickering with infection, checked the quantum signature. Authenticated at highest level, Commander. The message originates from Outer Defense Perimeter Station 8. Vexrix's compound eyes darted between the status displays showing Earth's self-immolation and the urgent warning about the mysterious fleet. Something unprecedented was happening. A primitive species fighting with such desperate ferocity, and now an unknown threat approaching the Caxtheri homeworlds. For the first time in the 10,000-year history of the Dominion, a Hive commander hesitated. Divert 1/3 of our functional vessels to investigate this threat, Vexrix finally ordered. The remaining fleet will continue the Earth cleansing operation. In his underground facility, Zhao received confirmation that his deception had worked, at least partially. They're splitting their forces, he told Chen. It's not enough, but it's something. Chen's expression remained grim. Then we move to the final phase. Prepare the diplomatic package. It's time they learned what happens when humans are truly cornered. The Himalayan command center shuddered as another Caxtheri orbital strike hit the mountain range above. Despite splitting their forces, the aliens still possessed enough firepower to systematically destroy Earth's remaining military installations. Admiral Chen studied the holographic display showing the approaching Caxtheri diplomatic vessel. It was smaller than their warships, a sleek biomechanical craft that resembled a giant iridescent scarab. It could be a trap, General Ramirez warned. Why would they suddenly offer to parley? Because something we've done has genuinely surprised them, Chen replied. They've conquered hundreds of species, and not one has ever fought back like this. The diplomat who emerged from the Caxtheri shuttle was unlike the warriors humans had encountered thus far. Smaller, with a deep purple carapace and ornate markings etched into its exoskeleton, it moved with a fluid grace that belied its alien physiology. 4 human translators surrounded it as it approached the negotiation table. "I am Speaker for the Dominion." It began without preamble, its voice synthesized through a device attached to its thorax. "I have been authorized to seek understanding of your species before final judgment is executed." Chen's expression remained carefully neutral. "Understanding. You destroyed Shanghai without warning and prepared to harvest our entire planet. What is there to understand?" The alien's compound eyes shifted, focusing on Chen with unsettling intensity. "Anomaly. That is what your species represents, an anomaly requiring study." It activated a holographic display showing recordings of previous Caxtheri conquests. The images were disturbing. Species after species capitulating immediately after demonstration strikes. Some attempted conventional defense, space battles, planetary shields, but surrendered when these proved futile. 342 species, the diplomat continued. That is our conquest total. Not one has employed biological weapons against our ships. Not one has destroyed their own resources rather than surrender them. Not one has penetrated our quantum communications network. It paused, mandibles moving in what might have been confusion. Most significantly, not one has ever sent its people on deliberate death missions without coercion. Your volunteers, they chose extinction. This behavior pattern has no precedent. Dr. Rahman, the philosopher who had advised the negotiation team, spoke quietly. "You're saying we're the first species you've encountered willing to die for an ideal rather than submit." "Precisely," the diplomat responded. "It is inefficient, illogical, yet effective. The Supreme Consciousness wishes to understand this contradiction." Chen leaned forward. "We call it humanity, and you've barely glimpsed what we're capable of when threatened." She nodded to her aide, who activated their own display. The screen showed satellite images of 17 Caxtheri colony worlds, each featuring a small blinking light at strategic locations. "During your fleet's confusion after our viral attack, we deployed Special Forces teams to these coordinates," Chen explained. "Each team carried a quantum-entangled explosive device powerful enough to destabilize your colony's critical infrastructure." The diplomat's exoskeleton rippled, a physiological reaction the human xenobiologists had identified as extreme alarm. "Impossible," it stated. "You don't possess such technology." "We didn't," Chen agreed, "until we reverse-engineered it from your damaged ships. The bombs are linked directly to Earth's biosphere monitors. If our planet dies, so do your colonies." The diplomat's translator emitted a series of clicks and whistles as it communicated with the Caxtheri High Command. After several tense minutes, it addressed Chen again. "The Supreme Consciousness questions your claim. Such technological adaptation in mere days defies probability models." Professor Rahman interjected again. "That's because your models don't account for human desperation. When our survival is threatened, we achieve the impossible." The diplomat's compound eyes focused on Rahman. "What is the source of this trait? It appears counter-evolutionary." "On the contrary," Rahman replied, "humans evolved on a dangerous world, surrounded by predators stronger and faster than ourselves. We survived not through physical superiority, but through cooperation, innovation, and an absolute refusal to accept extinction." He gestured to the images of devastation on Earth's surface. "What you see as irrational, our willingness to sacrifice ourselves, to destroy our own resources, is actually the culmination of our evolutionary history. We evolved knowing that sometimes survival requires terrible sacrifice." The diplomat was silent for a long moment before responding. "The Supreme Consciousness offers a proposition. Cease your attacks on our colonies, and we will withdraw to consider this anomaly that is humanity." Chen's expression hardened. "Not good enough. We want guarantees, not consideration, and we have specific terms." The ancient Tibetan monastery groaned under the weight of history being made within its walls. Outside, snow fell silently on the Himalayan peaks, covering the scars left by Caxtheri orbital strikes. Inside, humanity's future hung in the balance. The Supreme Hive Commander's arrival had shocked even Chen's team. That the Caxtheri leadership would risk direct exposure to a species that had already proven so dangerous suggested either supreme confidence or unprecedented concern. Standing nearly 4 meters tall, the Supreme Commander dominated the room. Its obsidian carapace, etched with symbols representing conquered worlds, absorbed light rather than reflected it. When it moved, smaller Caxtheri attendants scrambled to adjust their positions, a rigid hierarchy evident in every interaction. "Your species continues to surprise," it stated, mandibles clicking rhythmically as the translation device rendered its speech. "I have not physically attended negotiations in 718 conquest cycles." Dr. Elena Kuznetsova, Earth's chief negotiator, maintained a practiced composure despite the aliens' intimidating presence. A former diplomat with the Russian Federation, she had lost her wife in the Shanghai attack, but channeled her grief into laser-focused determination. "We are honored by your presence," she replied with diplomatic precision. It demonstrates the seriousness with which both sides approach these negotiations. The Supreme Commander's compound eyes shifted, focusing on different humans in the room simultaneously. There is no both sides. There is the Dominion, and there is prey. That you force this dialogue is anomalous. Kuznetsova allowed herself a thin smile. Perhaps it's time to reconsider that perspective. We've prepared our terms. She slid forward a single tablet containing humanity's 4 demands. The Supreme Commander didn't touch it, instead having a subordinate scan and transmit the contents directly to its neural interface. "Absurd," it declared after reviewing the terms. "You demand sovereignty, reparations, free passage, as if you were equals rather than a conquered species." From the corner of the room, Admiral Chen stepped forward. "We've earned those terms through blood and sacrifice. And we have leverage." The monastery walls shimmered as holographic projectors activated, displaying 17 separate feeds from Caxtheri colony worlds. Each showed human special forces teams, small groups of elite soldiers who had slipped through spatial distortions created during the fleet's confusion. On the screen labeled Caxtheri Mining Colony XIS-9, Staff Sergeant Amina Diallo stood beside a quantum-entangled device attached to the colony's atmospheric processors. On Agricultural World Z-12, Commander Jackson Kim's team had placed their device within the primary irrigation control facility. "Every bomb is connected to Earth's biosphere monitors," Chen explained calmly. "If Earth dies, 17 Caxtheri worlds experience catastrophic infrastructure failure simultaneously." The Supreme Commander's attendants chittered anxiously, but the leader itself remained still. "This is madness. You would destroy 17 worlds out of spite if we refuse your terms." Professor Roman, seated beside Kuznetsova, spoke quietly but firmly. "Not spite. Justice. You killed 20 million of our people without warning or provocation. These devices ensure that such an action will never again be taken against Earth or any other world." Kuznetsova added, "Your entire conquest strategy relies on the assumption that all species value survival above all else. We've demonstrated that humans are willing to pay the ultimate price to protect our values and future generations." The Supreme Commander's carapace flushed briefly with a pattern the xenobiologists had identified as indicating intense internal communication with the hive mind. For 9 hours, the negotiations continued, with the Caxtheri delegation frequently withdrawing to confer among themselves. Throughout the marathon session, Kuznetsova never wavered. When the Supreme Commander attempted to reduce the technology transfer requirements, she calmly displayed footage of Shanghai's destruction. When it argued against free passage rights, she reminded it of the 17 colony worlds held hostage. As the evening wore on, the Supreme Commander finally approached the treaty tablet and pressed a serrated appendage to the screen, leaving behind a unique biochemical signature impossible to forge. "We accept these terms. It transmitted, its synthesized voice carrying a new tone the translators couldn't quite identify. Though we do not fully comprehend your species, we respect your capacity to enforce your will. Later that night, after the aliens had departed and the human delegation celebrated this unexpected victory, Chen found Kuznetsova alone in the monastery garden, tears streaming silently down her face. "Elena," Chen asked gently, "what's wrong?" "We did it. We saved Earth." Kuznetsova looked up, her expression troubled. "That's what frightens me, Helena. I realized something during the negotiations. Not once did I doubt we would actually detonate those bombs if they refused our terms." Chen was silent for a long moment before responding. "Because you knew we would. That's what they finally understood today. We weren't bluffing. And that's why they signed." Captain Maya Singh stood on the observation deck of the EA's Resilience, Earth's first true interstellar vessel, constructed with Cax-Theory reparation technology. Through the viewport, the bustling trade hub orbiting Proxima Centauri presented a kaleidoscope of alien vessels, each design reflecting the unique biology and culture of its creators. "Traffic control has cleared us for docking at Bay 17, reported Lieutenant Commander Okafor, Singh's first officer and daughter of the xenobiologist who had first identified the Cax-Theory biological vulnerabilities. "They've designated it a priority berth." Singh nodded, noting the nervous energy in her crew as they prepared for their first official diplomatic mission beyond the solar system. 5 years since the treaty, and humanity had transformed itself. The reparation technologies had accelerated human advancement by centuries, allowing Earth to establish outposts on Mars, Europa, and Titan. "Look at them," Okafor said quietly, gesturing toward the alien vessels, giving the Resilience a conspicuously wide berth. "They're terrified of us." Singh had noticed it too, the way other ships altered course to avoid close proximity to the human vessel, despite the crowded spacelane. "Not terrified," she corrected. "Cautious. There's a difference." As they docked, Singh prepared to represent Earth at the first Proxima Conclave, a gathering of 17 spacefaring species to discuss trade routes and resource-sharing agreements. Humanity had been invited despite being newcomers to interstellar travel, an unprecedented honor that Singh suspected had less to do with respect and more to do with wariness. The reception area teemed with alien life, beings of all morphologies, atmospheric requirements, and evolutionary histories. Some floated in containment fields that simulated their native environments. Others wore exoskeletons that mirrored the Cax-Theory design but served as environmental suits rather than natural protection. A gelatinous entity approached, its translucent body pulsing with bioluminescent patterns that the translator rendered as speech. "Captain Singh of Earth. I am Diplomatic Connector Zhuob of the Cygnus Collective. We are most honored by your presence." The translator conveyed the hesitation before honored, suggesting a more complex sentiment than the word implied. "The honor is ours," Singh replied diplomatically. "Earth is grateful for the opportunity to join the galactic community." The aliens' inner lights pulsed rapidly. "Your Shanghai resistance is much discussed among our worlds. They say your suicide warriors carried planet-killer viruses engineered from their own genetic material. They say your leaders planted quantum bombs on 50 Cax-Theory worlds." Its voice dropped to what approximated a whisper. "They say you threatened to destroy your own planet rather than surrender its resources." Singh recognized the exaggerations but didn't correct them. The stories had grown with each retelling, and perhaps that served humanity's interests. "We merely defended our home," she said simply. Another alien joined them, a towering avian being with iridescent feathers and 4 wings folded elegantly against its body. "The Cax-Theory have canceled their trade delegation to this conclave," it announced, its translator rendering a melodic series of chirps into crisp English. "This is the 3rd major gathering they have avoided since the incident with Earth." Singh knew this was significant. The once dominant Cax-Theory had begun retreating from galactic politics, their empire showing signs of fragmentation as subjugated species, emboldened by Earth's example, initiated their own resistance movements. 3 former client worlds have declared independence in the past stellar cycle, the avian being continued. Without violence, the Caxtheri simply withdrew rather than enforce compliance. That evening, in her private quarters aboard the Resilience, Singh received an encrypted transmission. The security protocols identified it as originating from the Caxtheri leadership, though no Caxtheri representatives had officially attended the conclave. The message contained advanced stellar cartography data, information worth incalculable value to Earth's fledgling interstellar program, and 8 simple words. "You taught us fear. We taught you stars." Singh forwarded the message to Admiral Chen, now serving as Earth's first galactic ambassador. Within hours, she received Chen's response. "The Caxtheri are pragmatists, Maya. They've recognized that maintaining hostile relations with humans is costly. More importantly, they've discovered something no predator wants to admit. Sometimes the prey fights back." 2 days later, as the conclave concluded, Singh observed something remarkable. The various species, many with histories of conflict or competition, had unified around a new diplomatic framework with humanity playing the central mediating role. Earth, the youngest spacefaring civilization present, had somehow become the linchpin of a fragile interstellar alliance. "They respect us," Okafor suggested as they prepared to depart. Singh shook her head. "No, they're hedging their bets. If humans could stand against the Caxtheri, what else might we be capable of?" As the Resilience broke orbit, Singh thought about the 17 Caxtheri colony worlds where human special forces teams had been extracted after the treaty, but where the quantum-entangled bombs remained in place, a silent guarantee of humanity's promise to defend itself. Throughout explored space, the phrase had spread from species to species, entering the lexicon of galactic diplomacy. Never mess with humans. It wasn't just a warning. It had become a fundamental principle of interstellar relations.